So if we're still here, let us go. Breaking the triangle. The triangle starts to break. Let's take a look here. Unit of account, the mental concept of money can be split because it's a mental concept that we can apply to the medium of exchange and the store of value. And on that x-axis, time is t. And the fractures that we see in this diagram, which I hope you saw, lest this video be even worse than it already might be. The fractures you see in this diagram are time-related. So there we go again, these time-related roles, right? On a short timeline, length of time is the key variable t. Fiat currencies will perform our necessary monetary functions, medium of exchange and unit of account. But at some point on the timeline, length of time, we will switch to a different medium, gold. Or, you know, if we're thinking more theoretically in this two monies parallel account, it would be switching to a different medium, the wealth reserve focal point par excellence. On a long timeline, gold will perform our necessary monetary functions perfectly, store of value and long-term unit of account. And I think that's important. It's important in terms of the big reasons of international, and we'll get to this, I guess, a little bit soon, international settlements of balance of trade and such. And this is where free gold is really, you know, it's emerging by all accounts. Most of those accounts not being made by a lot of people who are talking a lot of things. There's no upper limit on the timeline axis when it comes to gold. If plotted out, it runs to infinity. And Fofo calls this outcome his new free gold quadrangle. Sorry, free gold quadrangle. This background noise is awesome. And the unit of account there stretches across. And at some point we kind of change our units of account to value or to exchange or settle balances of trade, depending on the time. The timeline axis represents the amount of time you are willing to hang on to the fiat currency you either earn or receive in payment. If the monetary authority is printing money, for example, time will be shorter and shorter. In a hyperinflationary situation, time will slide all the way to the left with a value close to zero. Kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. As the new free gold system of natural, pristine balance emerges, the fiat monetary authority will find its wisest move is to keep the money supply under control. And with a wise central bank, gradually the time value will shift back to the right little by little, or find some sort of balance and stasis naturally. Clarify the view. This concept that the traditional monetary functions are now separating into non-fixed, i.e. floating, media, has been both an epiphany for some and a stumbling block for others. My goal here is to clarify the view for those who cannot seem to get it. When comparing any two monies, the circulation velocity, or the demand for money, to the Austrians, correlates to and is a measurement of their respective store of value properties. And this kind of goes back into the Gresham's law if we're looking at the two monies, which one being the good and one being the bad of Gresham's law. Perhaps we might think about the circulation velocity of the bad money being much higher because the demand for that money is much lower, and the circulation velocity of the good money is a lot lower. The flow of the good money is a lot lower because the demand for that money is higher. And this kind of is how the free gold quadrangle, I think, works. It kind of has that hint of Gresham's law phenomenon there, where you have this good money, bad money, two monies, time-related roles. Converge to two monies in these time-related roles. They naturally take on those roles, and and one of them is used for transactional, and therefore is highly more cycled. The other, so we could consider that one the bad one, but it's really not a bad money definitely not in a moral sense. And we can think of the good one as the one which flows a lot less, like the gold. It still flows. They both flow. Here we go. See? Sometimes I even forget what I've read before. When comparing any two monies, circulation velocity, or the demand for money to the Austrians, correlates to and is a measurement of their respective store of value properties. In other words, the currency that circulates with greater velocity is in low demand. It's the bad money, with a short store of value time frame, while the slower currency velocity is the one that's in higher demand. It's the good money with a greater ability to store value through time. So there you have it. I think that's a key into Gresham's law, is this time, the time value of those assets. The time value, its ability to store value through time. I don't know if that's a proper use of the term time value, but anyhow. So this is a clear example of how the transactional and reserve functions of money are able to separate right before our eyes into two different media. Think about Zimbabweans, there you go, Zimbabweans quickly spending Zimbabwe dollars while hoarding US dollars. Ludwig von Mises called it a secondary media of exchange. The term secondary media of exchange obviously implies the existence of a primary media of exchange. But why only two? Well, the answer is simple, because we are dealing with two needs, two separate functions or roles in which we use money. So, naturally, humans tend towards the focal points. That's another premise in the free gold unfolding inevitabilities. And again, we get Fofo's dilemma. So let's read it again for all of our sake. Fofo's dilemma. When a single medium is used as both store of value and medium of exchange, it leads to a conflict between debtors and savers. Fofo's dilemma holds true for both gold and fiat, the solution being free gold, which incidentally also resolves Triffin's dilemma. Talks about the euro here, eliminating certain flaws of Triffin's dilemma. There's a lot of euro talk. I'm going to not really talk much about the euro. I don't really understand it well enough, but I obviously have read enough times about its Konfinstat and its mark-to-market policy on the reserve asset, gold, on its first line of its European Central Bank balance sheet. But then when I hear a guy like Jim Rogers telling Thomson Reuters that he sees an end to the euro or a big shakeup, but also a kind of, he sees a demise to the euro in a certain sense. I wonder if that's taken into account, if he's taking into account, the European Central Bank balance sheet, and what effect does that really have in the world? I have my ideas, but I don't really know enough about that whole mechanism and all of that. So, and all the effect that countries leaving would actually have on the currency itself, not the political union or lack thereof, but more just that medium of exchange, European Central Bank situation. I have a feeling it will survive in a certain way because of the way it links itself referentially to gold and is supranational. Interesting thought experiment. What we really want in the end is to be able to store our value. The hard money crowd, easy money crowd doesn't have value to store. They want to consume capital more than they produce. No moral judgments on anything. There's just observations trying to be made. And And so, at the end of the day, we really don't save all that much of our earnings, perhaps a small portion, and therefore, do we really need it to be 100% reserved? For example, using a fixed gold standard at a reserve ratio or a rate of, let's say, 60% or 80% or 100%, such that for everything you spend, it needs to have that 100% reservation. I don't know. What really matters to people is just to be able to save what they have, a little bit that they want to save every month or every so often. Because when they want the credit, they want the credit too. So free gold seems to be a very nice, flexible system. Okay. The economy needs the lubrication provided by transactional currency for it to run smoothly. Obviously, not all of it is saved and stored as wealth. Only a small portion of the flow of transactional currency is saved. And those that would hope to print in order to buy are only stealing from that small portion that is saved. If you do the math, you'll find that, in the long run, this is true. And if you separate that saved portion by using a secondary medium that floats in value, then inflationary price policy becomes self-defeating to the currency manager. I repeat, if you separate that saved portion by using a secondary medium that floats in value, then inflationary policy becomes self-defeating to the currency manager. This is how you have a true competing currency. Not two currencies competing for the medium of exchange crown, but a separate medium of savings competing against the medium of exchange for pole position on the time equals t axis. And once again, this is free gold, and it is unfolding today. It requires no activism or political, legal changes at this point. It is, how do you say, baked into the cake already? And once again, he adds links to which I cannot access from this medium. These posts briefly explain how we aren't quite there yet, and so on. Coming towards the end, I think perhaps we might be able to keep it into one more video. That we shall do. Alrighty then. Alrighty then.